I have a client, he has his own food poisoning case. He was admitted to the hospital for 2 days and then discharged. And then he had complaints, the typical food poisoning complaints like nausea, diarrhea, vomiting, whatever, for like about 2 weeks. So he was out of work for about 2 weeks, which is, it's pretty significant, but, and he was treated and released the same day. I'm sorry. And then he had the issues for 2 weeks. So he asked ChatGPT or Gemini, one of those, he said, this is what my case is about. This is and how much do you think my case is worth? And because we were talking about value, and I told him like, hey, I think based off the medical records I've reviewed and what I know about your case, I think your case is worth, let's say, I think I told him somewhere between 10 and 50K, and he said, well, do you believe in Gemini or ChatGPT? I'm like, yeah, they're great tools. He's like, well, I put all the information in there and it said that, it should be somewhere between 75,000 and 150,000. And why would it be so different? And I said, well, what inputs did you put? Yes. And he's like, so that's like very important, Yeah. And he said, well, I put that I was incapacitated for 2 weeks. And I said, that's where between me and you, I would push back on that because that's kind of a vague way of putting it. Mm-hmm. Like, yes, you were off of work for 2 weeks, but I would agree with ChatGPT if you told me that you were hospitalized and admitted to the hospital for 2 weeks. I think that makes it a severe case of food poisoning. And I think that could, up the value significantly. But being treated and released the same day and then having those issues at home is completely different.
Hi, and welcome to Main Street AI, the podcast where traditional businesses are quietly revolutionizing their operations with artificial intelligence and winning. In this podcast, I sit down with industry leaders from law firms and professional services and other Main Street businesses to explore their AI journey. We dive into the opportunities they see, the challenges they're navigating, and the real impact of AI on their industries. Whether you're AI curious or ready to implement, this show brings you insights from leaders who are actually using this technology to serve customers better, empower employees, and drive profitable growth. Jordan Vahdat is the founding partner of Vahdat Weisman Law, a personal injury firm based in Livonia, Michigan that serves clients across the entire state and has even litigated cases as far as California, Texas, and Kentucky. The firm has also built a uniquely specialized second practice representing medical providers in the collection of their bills against insurance companies. In 7 years, Jordan has grown the firm to 7 attorneys while staying intentional about culture, efficiency, and the kind of client relationships that outlast the case file. In this conversation, we dig into how his team is using AI tools to analyze thousands of pages of medical records in minutes, the nuanced tension that's emerging when clients use consumer AI tools to second-guess their attorneys, and why Jordan believes the lawyers who will thrive in this era are the ones who treat AI the way master mechanics treat a great set of tools. Let's dive in. Hi, welcome back to the Main Street AI podcast. This is Stephen Whittier with Satori Coach IO, and today I'm joined by Jordan Vahdat of Vahdat Weisman Law. Jordan, thanks for joining.
Yeah, no problem.
Great. Excellent to have you on, and you're in the personal injury space. Tell me a little bit about your firm and what you do.
So we have a small law firm in Livonia, Michigan. We serve the Metro Detroit area, and actually we pride ourselves on practicing throughout the whole state of Michigan. So we take cases up north, and we've gotten referrals from other lawyers that don't want to travel to different parts of the state. And so we litigate all over. We've even taken cases, personal injury cases, that involve Michigan residents that were injured, let's say out of state, and they come back to Michigan for their treatment. It makes sense sometimes for us to handle those out of state cases. So I've litigated cases in Southern District of California, Southern District of Texas. We've had cases in Kentucky, Tennessee. And those are kind of, it has to be that specific instance where it makes sense to have a Michigan lawyer because all the medical providers and a lot of the evidence is actually going to be in Michigan. So then, that connection makes sense. But yeah, we've been around since 2019. Like I said, we have 7 lawyers. And we practice, we do represent people primarily involved in automobile accidents, slip and falls. And I kind of pride myself in taking strange general negligence cases. So people who have been injured on a airplane, train, those are all examples of cases that we've had. And just in, if it's a workplace accident, but it's caused by a third party, that wouldn't be workers' comp. We don't do workers' comp. But if it's caused by a third party, we can handle those workplace injury cases as well. And then we have a subset of our practice, which is we represent medical providers in the collection of their bills, but these are medical providers that specialize also in treating patients that have been involved in some sort of traumatic accident, whether it's a car accident, slip and fall. And so that kind of grew organically and naturally in our practice. So we have a couple lawyers that their sole practice is representing medical providers in the collection of their bills against automobile insurance companies or other insurance companies. And so we have that expertise as well. And most of them are medium to small businesses. We have represented like regional hospitals before as well and outpatient surgery clinics. But I would say the vast majority of medical providers we represent are small businesses. We represent pharmacies, MRI clinics, PM&R, pain management clinics, physical therapies, chiropractors. I mean, pretty much any medical provider that would treat a victim of an accident, we've represented like durable medical equipment. I'm probably missing some, but those are like the examples of all the different types of clients we have.
That's an interesting niche. I wasn't even aware of that. So that's yeah, that sounds like a great outgrowth for everything else you do. When it comes to whether it's an individual or one of these businesses is trying to collect, what would you want them to know that maybe they don't know ahead of time? Because obviously you're the legal professional, you're the lawyer, they're not. What are the sort of things like advice that you'd want them to be able to know? Maybe they underestimate about what you do.
One thing is, I mean, I highly recommend that medical providers take control of their receivables because if you hire a lawyer like our firm to represent you, and let's say you haven't been paid in 30 days or 90 days, you might as well hire your own attorney because what it does, it gives the actual medical clinic complete control of their receivable. Because now we're representing just you and your bill against the insurance company. And also, it's at a lower fee. Typically, if you keep your bill with the patient and their lawyer, that lawyer is typically on a 1/3 contingency. So you're paying 0.33% off the top to a lawyer that's representing the best interest of that patient, not necessarily the best interest of the medical clinic. So if you hire us, number one, you're taking control of your AR, your accounts receivable, because now you have, when we get an offer, we're going to come to you and say, hey, this is the offer, this is where we want to counter, or this is why we recommend accepting. You have a choice. When you keep your bill with the patient and their lawyer, they get the choice of whether they settle or not, and then they decide how much they can afford to pay the medical provider. So I think that's something that medical providers don't really realize. I think some of them think, oh well, we're not in the business of filing lawsuits. We just treat people and send bills out, and that seems easier maybe at first blush, but it's actually number one, you're at the mercy of the patient and the lawyer. They may not pay you, right? They may settle the case and say, you know what, this is a patient's responsibility or client's responsibility. Here you go. Here's the money. Here's the bill. At some point, you might have to negotiate with them and pay it. So if you're a medical provider, you want to have control over how much money you're going to receive, and hiring us gives you complete control because now you know in exactly every single file, what's going on with it, what's the offer, and it just gives you complete control, and you're paying a lesser fee. So the only, I guess, there really is no downside because no matter what, they're going to have to send their medical records to a lawyer and the billing records. And so the only difference is you would provide that to the lawyer for the patient, and then you would also provide it to your own lawyer. So it's really not really that much of a burden. And as far as testifying or having to produce proofs, it's kind of rare that the medical provider has to produce like a representative to testify. Normally, we've been doing this so long, and we have relationships with insurance defense attorneys that, once they get to know the clients and the common issues that are coming up, it's just not necessary. And even if they do try, we find a lot of courts where the judges just won't allow it because they say, look, we have a dispute as to really how much is owed most of the time, and it's really not necessary to produce a bunch of witnesses to testify and stuff like that.
Right. No, that's great information. And Then from more individual personal injury cases, are there certain trends you see with, maybe people are waiting too long to contact you, or any other type of advice there for people that may have had an injury?
I mean, it really varies on that front, but I think one of the trends is I think a lot of people are they basically want to vet different lawyers right in the beginning, and which is fine. But I think the focus should be right after the accident is to get to medical treatment and document what happened, and and then because you could always hire a lawyer later. Of course, you want to start vetting lawyers and get into that as well. But the number one thing should be after the accident, get it documented. Whether it's a slip and fall, file that incident report with the ask for the video or ask that it at least be preserved in writing. Go and have it documented and explain to the medical professional, this is how I got my injury. Because, a lot of times the medical professionals, they're focused on just what's the acute injury and how do we treat it, not necessarily how it was caused, but it's important for people to really communicate that, because I see that a lot. It's like, yes, they go to an urgent care or they go to the hospital, but it's only said in passing, and it's not really said that, like, no, I was involved in a car accident. This is what caused me to have my neck pain. And because you want that documented for the insurance purposes, that because we have to prove that the incident caused, the injury, and it's not some sort of pre-existing condition or something else that happened, so documentation is important in the beginning, and then you have time to hire a lawyer later. Most of our clients, we keep them before we file a lawsuit. They're with us in our pre-litigation department, where we're just basically uh, opening the appropriate claims, talking to the adjusters while they're treating, and we usually won't even file a lawsuit until usually 6 or 10 months after the incident. Because and there's a reason behind that. We want to be able to monitor their medical as they're treating and see, what's their prognosis, what kind of treatment do they need, and is this case ripe for a lawsuit, or maybe this is a case like maybe they've like their treatment's dwindling down in 6 or 10 months and it's coming to an end. Then it might make more sense to reach out to the insurance company and be like, hey, we've got these outstanding benefits, or we got this injury, treatment's pretty much complete. Can we, negotiate something instead of filing a lawsuit? And so a lot of those cases might be ripe for settlement instead of going into litigation. So yeah, number one is documentation, treatment, and then when it comes to hiring a lawyer, they have time. But the one thing I've warned them people about is not to speak to insurance representatives, especially from the at fault driver, because what they're going to do is they're going to call on a recorded line and try to limit damages. So they're going to and initially people's complaints might it's not that they change. I think the insurance companies like to say that their complaints change, but really what happens is this is most typical situation. Someone's in an accident. They have a lot of adrenaline at the scene. They don't have any obvious acute fractures or anything. So they're thinking, okay, like if the vehicle's drivable, I want to get it out of here. I don't want to incur a tow expense. I don't want to incur an EMS. Even if they're shaken up, they kind of want to get out of the scene once the police report's written. It's very common, and that's fine. But what happens later, once that adrenaline comes down, a day or two, if they have soft tissue injuries or injuries to their spine that aren't obvious, then they start feeling it later, and then as certain parts of their body, those injuries start to resolve or get better, they start noticing other parts that are hurting that were originally injured. So it's not that it changed. It's just like, it's easier to explain with an example. Like we'll have, like if you have a client that has an acute like right shoulder injury and it's causing them a lot of issues, if they get treatment for the shoulder and as it starts to heal, then all of a sudden now they're feeling like a neck pain, a really bad neck pain. But it's, and the adjusters will be like, well, that's a new complaint. That wasn't there for months. And we've had doctors that testify, in cases where we're preparing for trial, and their explanation, makes the first time I heard it, it made a lot of sense to me. And the doctor that I was deposing said, look, it's not that any of their complaints changed; those were there. It's just once this patient's shoulder started to heal, their body and started noticing, or their brain starts noticing, like, hey, I also need attention to my neck. So that's why it's important when, like, if that patient, that example, gets a call from the adjuster, 2 days, 3 days after the accident, what are they going to say? Well, I have really bad shoulder pain. And the adjuster's going to be like, well, do you have any complaints in your neck or your back? And they might say no. Like, because right in that moment, like they're just focused on their shoulder. And now they've kind of limited themselves on a recorded line admitting that I don't have any complaints as to my back. Then 2 months down the road, their shoulder gets better and their neck and back is hurting. Now the adjuster's like, well, I already got them on a recorded line admitting that there's no issues with their neck and back from the accident. And that's why our role and the benefit of hiring a lawyer early is we serve as a buffer between the insurance companies and our clients. And so, and obviously this is what we do every day, all day. So we know the common pitfalls and traps that insurance companies will try to use. And even by what they're asking of us and the questions they ask of the claimant, we already kind of know, okay, they're going to try to push this narrative onto the claimant that maybe they resided somewhere else, or they're going to push a narrative onto the claimant that they misrepresented something in the application for insurance. And so we can serve as a protection for the client. That's our purpose, really. We're the buffer, and we can tell them, hey, this is what they're asking for. This is what they're trying to do. What's actually going on? And then we get the evidence from them, and then we can present it in a manner that's in the best light, presents our client in the best light possible. And that's really our job. Maximize their claims, present them in the best light possible, and then also, what I tell clients a lot of times is, what's good for you is going to be good for your case. So if the doctor's recommending PT, OT, chiro, the most important thing is you follow your doctor's recommendations. That's going to be good for you physically to follow, in your body to follow it, but it's also going to be good for your case. Because every time you go to a medical appointment, they're documenting what's your range of motion, what's your pain level, how are you feeling today, all of that. And so those records themselves are already building your case for you. And the damages for you. And it's going to tell the story of who is the claimant or the client and what were their injuries and what did they go through.
Yeah, great advice. Next, I'll pivot over a bit to the technology side of the equation here. AI has been very disruptive across all industries. It's only accelerating. How are you seeing trends right now of AI in your space?
Yeah. So I love it in the legal field. I mean, we started using it for legal research. We used a software called Case Text, and it was in its beta testing phase. Mm-hmm. And it was a small company at the time, and we loved it because before there were these expensive case legal research tools you could use that were not AI driven, and you had to learn. It wasn't overly complicated, but you had to kind of learn a little bit of the language models that those search engines want you to use in order to find relevant cases or similar cases to your case when you're looking to cite other case law or whatever it may be. So when Case Text came out, it said basically, look, you can upload a brief and we'll try to make the defendant's brief, for example. They file a motion to dismiss saying, hey, there's no question that this case should be dismissed as a matter of law, and this is why. And so we could upload their brief into Case Text, and Case Text would kind of say, hey, these are cases that they're either misciting or they're mischaracterizing, maybe. And then here are other cases that are counter to it, or here are cases that are speaking negatively of the cases that they cite. And so it kind of gave you a more in-depth analysis. It wasn't doing the analysis for you, but it's pointing you in the right direction for ultimately what your analysis is going to be. And that was in its most early stage. And ultimately what happened with Case Text is it was issued at a really affordable price and rate, and eventually got bought out by Thomson Reuters. And they honored the price for a while, and then they jacked the rates up. But by the time they got acquired by Thomson Reuters and became part of their brand, the Westlaw brand, which I think is the most dominant legal research tool. All the bigger firms use it, and it's one of the most expensive services more expensive services you can get. But once that happened, there were all these other AI tools that are now out, and they're incrementally getting better and better over time. So even through the State Bar of Michigan, they have free legal research that's available to all lawyers throughout the state through I think it's called Fastcase, and then a subset of Fastcase they have it's their AI platform, which is Vincent AI. At first it was free in the testing phase. Now they charge for it, but that's and it's excellent. I mean, whenever we use it, it gets better and better over time, to the point where I mean, I think appellate lawyers are probably, well, a lot of the guys that do appellate work anywhere towards the tail end of their careers that I know of, that specialize in like this very legal, research intense, like writing and reading. Those guys, I mean, their days are numbered because these tools are just so powerful and they can just do it so much more efficiently and better probably than any person. Um, now it's to the point where, I can upload my actual legal brief that I've drafted with that we draft with the help of AI or even an appellate lawyer, and have it, scrutinize it, analyze it, look at the counter arguments, and it's just an excellent, excellent tool. Saves us a ton of time, saves us money. It's great. It's been great for that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Efficiency is such a key. So legal research, document drafting and analysis. Any other applications, or is that pretty much what you've been focusing on right now?
Well, for the medical records, for us, sometimes we used to, if we had complex injury cases, especially, we don't do a ton of it, but we have a lawyer that does medical malpractice, and a couple lawyers. These type of cases can be really, the medical can be really complex on it. And AI, there's some AI tools that we use that basically you can upload, let's say, 10,000 or even more, 20,000 pages of medical records, and you can enter different queries like give me a list, compare, and contrast, injuries or conditions that are acute in nature that arguably are from the trauma that we're claiming, whether it's an accident or slip and fall, versus degenerative conditions that this person had. And then also give us an analysis on if any of those degenerative conditions, if there's medical evidence that they were aggravated by the trauma. So then it gives you like a really in-depth analysis, and then you can really have almost like this back and forth conversation with it, saying, okay, well, where do you see evidence of an aggravation, of this pre-existing condition? Where do you see evidence of which doctor is going to support disability for this patient, or and so though before that we either had to do that ourselves, but a lot of times if the medical is very complex, we had to hire these nurse, or some of them are physician run companies that would actually do the medical reviews for us, and it was really costly. You send them the medical, and then you would give them the same prompts, but they would give you basically a memo back, with their response and a summary of all the records and where they are. And it was very time consuming, it was very expensive. So I think those places for sure are in trouble of going out of business as well, because the software that's available out there that does this kind of stuff, it's just only getting better and better. And it takes 5 minutes, to get a detailed summary. And it's not only that, it's very interactive, and the what I'm finding too is the interaction with the AI, and when you're doing an active analysis, that back and forth, and when you question the results and like try to see the proofs and go back to the proofs, you're learning, about the case, and you're kind of preparing yourself for counter arguments by doing that. And so it actually increases, like for me personally, it increases my confidence in the case, because I'm questioning it, and I'm giving it the arguments I think, the other side's going to make or is making. And then I'm seeing evidence that shows that, like, look, because we have the burden of proving the case when we file a lawsuit. And then I'm looking and saying, well, this is making me a lot more confident that like we have enough here to like really prove this case, and to get to a jury on this. And so that increases like the value of the case as well. If it increases the lawyer's belief that you have a viable claim, then our job is to sell that right to the judge, jury, the defense attorney, that, hey, like, no, this is actually a legitimate case, and this is why, and like show the evidence.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. So what would you say you're most excited about thinking about the next number of years, where things are going with this tech?
Well, I want to say something I'm concerned about first, if you don't
Yeah,
mind.
yeah, go ahead, please.
One thing that is a little bit of a negative, I would say so far, that I'm seeing is, I think AI, it's affecting some of our relationships with our clients because they are using it as a way to double check our advice sometimes.
Mm,
And so what they're doing is, and I haven't. It's just starting to get like become an issue, but I'm seeing this like as a trend. So what's happening is, for example, it's easier with an example. So I have a client who has their son has a poisoning case. Actually, no, that's a different case. The I have a client. He has his own food poisoning case, and he was admitted to the hospital for 2 days and then discharged. And then he had complaints, the typical food poisoning complaints like nausea, diarrhea, vomiting, whatever, for like about 2 weeks. So he was out of work for about 2 weeks, which is, it's pretty significant, but, and he was treated and released the same day. I'm sorry. And then he had the issues for 2 weeks. So he asked ChatGPT or Gemini, one of those, he said, this is what my case is about. This is and how much do you think my case is worth? And because we were talking about value, and I told him like, hey, I think based off the medical records I reviewed and what I know about your case, I think your case is worth, let's say, I think I told him somewhere between 10 and 50K, and he said, well, do you believe in Gemini or ChatGPT? I'm like, yeah, they're great tools. He's like, well, I put all the information in there and it said that, it should be somewhere between 75,000 and 150,000. And why would it be so different? And I said, well, what inputs did you put?
Yes.
And so that's like very important,
Yeah.
And he said, well, I put that I was incapacitated for 2 weeks. And I said, that's where between me and you, I would push back on that because that's kind of a vague way of putting it. Like, yes, you were off of work for 2 weeks, but I would agree with ChatGPT if you told me that you were hospitalized and admitted to the hospital for 2 weeks. I think that makes it a severe case of food poisoning. And I think that could, up the value significantly. But being treated and released the same day and then having those issues at home is completely different, and so I think those conversations are fine. I mean, lawyers and clients are supposed to be able to have like difficult conversations, but I think where it becomes an issue is when they start to like distrust. It starts to become an issue. And so like I've had, for example, clients emailing me like very specific questions and it's very unusual. I could tell it's written by AI. Number one, that's the way it's written, and it's unusual because the questions themselves show a lack of understanding of procedure, not just procedurally what's happening, but substantively like what the law is. And so I think they're probably talking to an AI agent and it's giving them these questions that they should ask, which is okay. I guess they're trying to gain an understanding of the case. But at some point, I told the client, I had a conversation. I said, look, at some point, you either are going to trust me as your lawyer and that I have your best interests at heart, and I'm going to try to maximize the value of your cases and your claims. Because at the end of the day, the more money I get you, the more money I'm going to make. So I have every interest to push this as far as I can. However, if you don't trust me that I'm going to do that, and you think you can represent yourself using an AI tool, there's nothing legally preventing you from doing that. You can represent yourself and use these AI tools and go to court and make the arguments you want to make and file the things you want to file. Because at the end of the day, the only reason you have me is because you trust me that I have the expertise required to push your case, forward. And so I think that's where I could see it being an issue, because if to the extent it's creating this kind of, I don't want to say culture, but this kind of mentality that maybe I know better because me and Gemini know better than my lawyer, then that could be an issue. It's causing some like contention. Mm-hmm. And so, like in that specific instance, the client's like, no, obviously, like I want you to be my lawyer. The judges, the other lawyers, there's a certain expertise that, the clients have to recognize, I guess, that we do bring to the table. And also I think an argument I would make for why I don't worry that AI would just replace a lawyer is that, it's a tool. It's a powerful tool. But like an analogy I would give to a client is, you could give awesome tools to a handyman and they can only take that so far. But if you give awesome tools to like a master mechanic that has already specialized knowledge and experience in that area, I mean, they could take those tools a lot farther, right? And it's just like, you can also use the analogy of like your computer, right? Like it has a capacity to do so many different things. It's a great tool, but most people use it at a very surface level. They're just using it for surface, looking at things online and the net. They're not using all its capabilities. They're not making videos. They're not making, there's so many other things your computer can do for you. But you have to have the know-how on how to do it and the time, to do it. We can't all be experts at everything,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's interesting because I was having a conversation on one of the podcasts just earlier this week, and it was a different field, and the attorney was saying, I actually really like the fact that I have clients engaging with AI, so they come in more informed. But I can see with your branch of law how that can work and be a conflict, because it made sense for her, but what you're saying also makes perfect sense. They're looking at like what can I get out of this case, and they don't have the context that you have, let alone the expertise to know all the different variables involved. So yeah, that makes perfect sense. I almost wonder if when you do the disclosure, like we use AI in this firm, if there's something there to accompany that to say, we know sometimes our clients, will use these tools to inquire about their cases. Just trust us, like we use it too, but you have to understand the degree of context that goes into this, or something to that effect. I'm sure there's a way to language that, to maybe head that off at the pass.
Yeah, no, and we do try to update our fee agreements like once a year, and that is something that is definitely a good idea to disclose that, because we have, like, for example, one of the documents they sign is an authorization for us to communicate electronically, not just with them, because our case management system would allow us to text them. So like we're typing it in their actual file, a communication that goes to their phone, and they can text us photographs or anything they want. It goes straight to their actual file, and so it's a great tool. And so, that authorization allows us to communicate with them electronically using these case management systems, but also with their medical providers. So, if their medical, sometimes like the disability certificate is incorrect or has a mistake. Sometimes the dates might be wrong, like they have the date of accident wrong, and we want them to correct it. And so, like, we'll email them and say, hey, like this incident actually happened on X date, not Y, whatever. And so, yeah, I could totally see that for next year, like having some sort of AI disclaimer that, look, there's powerful tools that we use for AI to summarize records and you're free to use them as well, but just know that we have some tools that they're geared specifically to our personal injury practice, instead of just using like Gemini or ChatGPT, which are good tools themselves, but I think the legal tools, some of the tools that we use, they're geared specifically for what we do, and they retain a knowledge of like who we are and what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Very important.
Yeah.
Great. I'll circle back a little bit deeper dive into your practice. One question I always like to ask is, what would you say is your unique proposition? What do you do extraordinarily well at your firm that you maybe sets you apart from others in your field?
I think one thing that is really unique about our firm is we're so, and it wasn't intentionally so, it's just how it is. We're so diverse, that we have such a diverse clientele, not just in the type of cases that we take, but we have, like I speak Spanish fluently, and so there's not a lot of attorneys in Michigan that do so. So I have access to that community, and some of my best cases have come from the Hispanic community, and so I try to keep that tied in. And then we have my business partner, Kara Weisman. Her practice is a little bit more sensitive in nature, so she'll represent catastrophically injured individuals. A lot of them have, permanent disabilities for their whole life. Also, cases that are more sensitive in the sense that, like, they're minors that have been sexually abused by in hospital settings or in schools, and so it's a different, kind of what we bring to the table. Like for her and her clients specifically, it's very hands-on. She gets and it's not just one client. She's representing like whole families, because when an event like that happens, imagine, God forbid, but imagine you had somebody within your family that was catastrophically injured, like a child that's paralyzed from the waist down, or a father, that gets in a workplace accident that's now paralyzed. You know, you're not just representing that person; it affects everybody. It
Yeah.
affects their parents, their siblings, their dependents. And so, her practice is very personalized. Like she texts with her clients, even after cases, have settled and resolved. She they become part of like her community,
Hmm.
like so there's a personal relationship there that goes just beyond the attorney client relationship. So that's, I would say, very unique,
Yes.
and that's not common. And so we, as a law firm, we kind of allow our lawyers some independence to develop their own expertise. Of course, we all handle a lot of the same types of cases, but we each have kind of like our own niche. So, like for example, I get a lot of referrals from other lawyers actually on cases that they don't know what to do with because they're strange injury cases, or they might be kind of high risk, and I'll be willing to take the risk, And so some of the cases I have, like, they've been rejected by two, three lawyers, for poor liability, or there's many different potential defendants, and it just seems like it's going to be very difficult. And so I have a different type of practice, more high volume, and so I also do a lot of small cases where like they can't find a lawyer, and I'm like, you know what? But what happened to him was kind of unjust or is unjust, and I'm like, I want to take it and get them something, So I'll handle those, and those sometimes turn into really good referrals, even though like later on, because they remember that, like, oh, I remember like Jordan took my case when, three other lawyers said no. Now that, my brother, cousin, whoever is injured, like I'm sending them to Jordan, because I know he's gonna take care of them. And then so we have a Lebanese American lawyer, we have a Asian American lawyer, we just and we're all over Metro Detroit also, and so we represent a lot of different communities. We have our clientele is very diverse. So we have Middle Eastern. There's a huge Arab population, Chaldean population in Michigan, in this area. A lot of our clients come from that, from a Hispanic community. We have it's just a very diverse clientele,
Hmm.
and our lawyers come from the very diverse backgrounds too. Just like speaking practice wise, like we have a lawyer who she did insurance defense for many years before she joined our office, so brings that kind of perspective of how insurance companies are valuing claims and doing that. So we also leverage technology, and we're much more efficient than other firms. So a lot of other law firms, they still are using very antiquated systems when it comes to like client communication or even just getting records. And we we always try to be as efficient as possible, and we try to make the process as easy as possible for our clients. So they rarely have to even come into the office. If they want to, we're here and we're happy
Yeah.
to have them. They can set a meeting. But for most clients, they're already dealing with a lot. They might be missing work, or they're trying to work part-time or less because they're injured. They have to go to physical therapy 2, 3 times a week. They got to
Right.
see a pain doctor once a month. We don't want to add one other appointment, have to come sign paperwork at the office, So like when they sign up, we have them sign a power of attorney. We sign all the medical auths, anything that we need. We can sign on behalf of the client. We can get those records immediately. We work with companies that help us be efficient and get those records, because that could be a huge delay for some people. They're waiting like 3, 4, 5 months just to get the authorization signed.
Yeah.
And then you still gotta send it out to get a record, get the records. So I've always kind of leveraged technology to increase volume and increase efficiency and the quality of the work too.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I would say like we're kind of on the younger side, even though now I've been doing this 12 years. A lot of the law firms I'd worked at prior, I was like the youngest attorney there.
Mm.
And so, um, but I think we just have a good mix, and I try a lot of the cases here. So I tell people like I like trials and I enjoy doing them. And so if they have a case that they don't want to, that needs to be tried and they don't want to try it, like I'll do it.
Right.
And but statistically, 95% of cases aren't going to need trial. And so, but the fact that we can go to trial and we will on certain cases, I think sets us apart because insurance defense lawyers, they know that, if they're just going to lowball us, we'll just take a risk and go to trial, and we'll be prepared, and we're going to give them a hard time. um and so, yeah, I think those are all the little things that set us apart.
Yeah, excellent. Um, in terms of growth, so you said this firm's been operating since 2019.
Yes.
What stage would you say you're in right now of growth, and where are you looking to grow to in the next 12 months or so?
So we're still actively growing. We've grown organically and slowly, I would say. So now we're up to 7 lawyers, and we're actually in the middle of expanding our office. So we're in a commercial building on the top floor, and we've consistently kind of expanded in both directions. And we're able to do that. There's some vacancies on the top floor, and so we're actually expanding in both directions right now and adding more office space. So we're anticipating growing by about, I would say, 25%.
Great.
So we're actively hiring. Well, we promoted one of our staff to a paralegal and trained them. So we're looking for a receptionist actively, and we have a few interviews set up, and we're looking for another paralegal. And once the new office space is set up, we'll be adding another attorney, possibly paralegal. So,
Mm.
and we're in the middle. We started a new marketing campaign in January of this year, and it's a very also kind of multifaceted campaign with some aspects of it that are on the ground marketing efforts, and then some that are purely digital. And it's really paying dividends. And so we're growing, and then as you grow, though, it's kind of counterintuitive. It increases costs as you grow, and in our business, the turnaround rate is about 16 months. So the cases that are being signed up today are not going to settle until, on average, until a year and a half from now. And um, and so, we that's why we keep track of our data pretty carefully as far as like cases open and closed, and what stages they're in, how old they are. But by looking at that data, we can see like we're at a really healthy spot as far as like our case flow. And so we're really, optimistic as far as the next 12 months. Like things look really good. And like I'm generally very like pleased with the team that we have, like our staff. I feel like in the first few years, we kind of had like a startup kind of feel to the law firm. We just renovated the law firm too, and now like when you come to our office, it's like it's cozy, it's very professional, and it's just very, we hired an interior designer to like help us design it in a certain way to give off like we want it to not feel like a corporate insurance company law firm, and so we want it to feel more personable and like people to feel more comfortable here. So we have like open spaces with like comfy couches and like
Yeah.
lots of we like to joke about it, but we have probably the best snacks and break room out of any law firm in the state. I mean, we have like really large Costco and Amazon orders because we want our clients when they come here to testify or whatever we're doing that day to be comfortable, And so we have all sorts of drinks and snacks and just foods for people to enjoy. And we want our staff too. Like sometimes we work a lot. The work, it ebbs and flows, but there are times where like a lot of people are staying here like at 6:30, close to 7. We're still here. We want people to be comfortable, and have stuff that they need, or even so we allow people to we do have a budget for like the monthly snacks, but it's pretty. We allow people to like. We want to know, what do you guys like? You guys, what do you guys want to have? Let's switch it up as far as stuff we have in the office. So we have a really good work environment. We work pretty collaboratively together, and cooperate with each other a lot, bounce a lot of ideas off each other. And then because we have good technology too, we have the flexibility that people can work from home. And so we have a lot of like parents. I have 3 kids, and a lot of our staff have children. And so like we have the flexibility, like, hey, you have a recital, or you have soccer, or you have whatever. Go do what you need to do, log in later, finish what you need to do later. It's as long as the work gets done. Like to me, it doesn't matter if it's done at 10 p.m. or at 5 p.m. Like as long as the work's done, like that needs to be done that day, we'll find a way to get it done. And we recognize, like, we have especially now, it seems like more and more so people have complicated lives, and so we're going to adjust to that. As long as, but like that's what I said. Like going back to my point, we have such a tight knit, good group now that I have like zero concerns about people like trying to work from home and slacking off and things like that. I'm not concerned about that at all.
That's great. Culture is so important. What would you say? I usually ask, like, this is a magic wand question. If you could hypothetically wave a magic wand and fix any constraint or particular challenge to growth in the firm right now, what would that be?
Well, there's really constraint. I think the tough constraint, yeah, it would be staff, finding good staff. Because if we had a sudden and very large influx of cases, you we recognize like we only have capacity based off our current stat for a certain number of cases. Even the big firms, recognize it. Like some of the firms that have, I think one of the largest firms in this area, they have about 40 some lawyers, and they'll refer cases out to other firms, and they recognize they only have a certain capacity for cases because once you exceed that capacity, what's going to happen is something has to give, and so then the quality of work will go down, and we don't want that. So it actually would stress me out if we got a sudden and very large influx of cases, um, because I know it's too difficult to find good quality staff to meet that demand. And so I rather my preference is, so if I could wave a magic wand, it would say, can I would wave it and say, give me more staff candidates that are like the ones we have, like our current staff. And because they're not easy to find. The vetting that we do is a lot. We look at, even for a simple position like receptionist, it's hard for us to hire it because we want someone that fits our law firm culture, which is like we work
Exactly.
really hard, we're efficient, we're fast, but also like we're informal. We help each other.
Mhm.
It's not a very This is a very dynamic environment. So to give you an example, we hired this girl. She was straight out of she graduated from a really good college out east, and studies paralegal studies specifically, which is not really required for the job, but like it helps if somebody has it. And so she's very well educated and trained for the position. But when she shows up to work, um, I think she was used to working in a very corporate environment, which has very specific, like, these are the tasks you need to do today, right?
Mhm.
These are your expectations. It has very clear metrics. And when you come into a firm like ours, you have tasks that are due. They might be due in a week or two, and there's a variety of tasks. But and then there's stuff that comes up every day. And so you have to kind of plan your day in, like, okay, I have two appointments and I need to leave some room for whatever is coming up that day that a lawyer might need, have an urgent need to get something filed, or for you to review something, or for you to call on bills, or whatever it is. It's more dynamic. So
Yeah.
for her, I think that environment, it just it gave her anxiety,
Mhm.
because she was like, I'm showing up to work and I don't know what that my day is going to look like.
Yes.
And I try to explain to her that's going to take time because you're going to set what your day is going to look like based off what the job requires. And so you should have one or two tasks that need to get done that day that you designate time for. And then you need to keep space open for things that come up that day, whether it's checking your emails or assisting other people. Um, and it's going to be dynamic. And sometimes you might have a day, it happens to the lawyers all the time, where I come in and I have like six things I want to accomplish that day. And I get through three of them, and then I'm like, okay, I have other stuff that's come up that I need to deal with. I need to reschedule these other three. And so you have to come up with a system that works for you and how you work. We're not going to impose that on you. And so that is, it's not everyone's cup of tea.
Yeah.
Some people, and so it's not about qualification. Like, she was very well qualified.
Mhm.
She had all the skills that we needed, but for her, it was a bad fit because she just that's not how she likes to work. She likes to go in and know exactly what's expected of her and
Yes.
accomplish those tasks and then go home, which is fine. But that's not going to work for us.
Right. Yeah. It's such a huge piece of the puzzle, getting the right people that are a fit and are aligned to how you do things, and um, and your values and everything. It's really big. Where I like to always wrap up, Jordan, is with a personal, right? So we've gone from business and tech and all of that, growth targets, but what is your personal why for what you do? Gets you out of bed every day to go and represent the people you represent.
I think I'm naturally like a salesman. I enjoy connecting with people and selling uh, things. It gives me kind of an adrenaline rush and makes me feel good. And as a lawyer, I'm selling the cases in the sense that like I like and enjoy convincing whether it's judges, other attorneys, or evaluators, whoever's evaluating the case, that this is a good case and this is why, and then making arguments on the behalf. So really what I'm selling to them is that this client has a legitimate claim and it's worthwhile and this is why. And so I enjoy like the fight of it, like advocating for the person.
Mm-hmm.
And also because it gives me the opportunity to really look at all the and highlight the good in that person and present that, and then the defense is going to do the opposite. They're going to focus on the negative and try to hurt that person's credibility and hurt their claim in any way they can but they have to have kind of a negative mindset to do their job. I think my opinion is plaintiff lawyers, we kind of have to have we have to be the optimist and be like, look, they're a human being. Every human being is going to have its flaws. We all have our talents and our strengths and our weaknesses. But when you're doing this kind of work, we're going to focus and highlight. I'm going to present, Steven in the best light possible.
Mm-hmm.
These are his qualities. He's a good father. He was a good employee. And yes, he may maybe he had some other issues that you could criticize, but it's like he's still a human being with his life has value. The injuries he sustained he shouldn't have sustained, and he deserves to be compensated. And so doing that. And I think it just brings me a lot of joy, and I just really enjoy that. So that's a big why. Like if I wasn't doing, a lot of times I think if I wasn't doing this, I would be selling something, some sort of product. Because again, the only way you're effective at selling is you have to kind of convince the person that they need this product because it's going to improve their life in some way, right? And so in a way, you're also helping. Hopefully, if you're selling something positive, like you're selling something that's going to improve their lives and make their lives better in some way. And so I like that concept, and that's really and just generally I kind of just have a belief that I think all of us, like human beings in general, like we do our best when we're providing a service or like doing something that helps other people, or even if it's helping an industry or like a technology or whatever it is. If you're like staying busy, I think is just really important for people. I think people who don't work and are like heavily focused on themselves and just their own happiness, that could be like a recipe for disaster. I think, what I see is like, I see the best in people when they're out there, they're working hard, they're providing for other people, they're trying to improve the lives of people around them. And then in turn, it just naturally improves themselves. Mm-hmm. And I enjoy seeing that. I like seeing, like, I enjoy watching other lawyers that I think are skilled and good at their craft. I like seeing them in court, and I like to learn from them and see, or even if their style or their practice is very different than mine, a lot of times I pick up nice little like things that they do that I think are really effective. Yes. And I never thought of before. And I have a lot of respect for some colleagues that do the other work, other types of the legal practice is so diverse and the skill set that's required. And when I see a practice that's so different than mine, I'm like, wow, I can't believe at one point our skills were like the same, right out of law school. We probably knew similar, but then like with expertise and working in a certain field, you see them kind of at work and what they do, and you get an admiration for it, Yeah. As I imagine, like maybe other specialties feel like that, like a cardiologist might feel that way about another physician, that's practicing another specialty. It's kind of neat to see that, and so I don't know if that answers your question.
It does, yeah.
Okay.
Excellent. Fantastic, Jordan. So for anybody interested in learning more about your firm and services, or to get your help, what's the best way to contact you?
Yeah, so visit our website, thevwlaw.com, or give us a call at 734-469-4994, and we're happy. Our consultations are free. And so even if you've been rejected by another lawyer, you want someone else to take a second look, we're happy to do it. Doesn't cost you anything. And I review every single intake to see whether or not I think it has a viable claim. And even if we can't represent the particular person, a lot of times we'll recommend another lawyer who can help that person. So
Great. Really good information today, and really appreciate the conversation. Thanks so much.
no problem. Thank you.